Yep, we're really doing this. Coming right on the heels of a who poisoned the locust theory as well. Truly I am running out of ideas and peaked with my the lion, the switch and the ward of Rosby pun. And I didn't even make that the title of that video. But anyway, enough self-indulgent rambling. The thing about the who poisoned Joffrey mystery is that in theory it should only have been a mystery for a single chapter. It's only 10 pages between Joffrey's death and Littlefinger basically admitting that he did it. This isn't like R plus L equals J or the identity of young Griff, or any of the other theories that fans have had decades to speculate about. Most only had a few minutes. Yet the theories remain. Was it Littlefinger working with Olenna like he says? Or was she not actually involved at all? Was it someone else entirely, like Oberyn? Was Joffrey the target? Or was Tyrion? Did Joffrey actually just choke on his food? Did he have an allergy? Rabies? All of the above? The main problem that I and a lot of people have with the story presented by Littlefinger, a long time after Sansa gets on the ship, by the way, is how convoluted his plot is. So Dontos gets poisoned from somewhere, it's unclear where. Pycelle claims that he had some that's gone missing, but if he did, Tyrion didn't see it when he was checking the poisons out in Clash. Then Dontos or someone else puts it in a silver hairnet, gives it to Sansa, she wears it to the wedding, where Olenna has to get the poison out of Sansa's hairnet so she can then put it in Joffrey's wine, in a big massive cup that Joffrey was previously sharing with Marjorie. The problems with this are obvious. Why does Olenna need to involve Dontos, Sansa and Littlefinger? Sure, the strangler poison is rare and expensive, but not so much so that maces don't carry it around for some unknown reason, and presumably there's all manner of cheaper poisons she could have used instead. The trouble with questioning the convoluted plot using Sansa and Dontos and the hairnet is that it did actually happen, so at least someone must think it's worth doing. That someone is Littlefinger, and it does make sense for him. He claims that he has no motive to kill Joffrey and just does random things to throw people off, but that's obviously complete rubbish. A lot of people make fun of Littlefinger's 4D chess with multiverse time travel in the TV show, but it's not a million miles off his explanation for why he'd killed Joffrey in the book. So if not having a motive doesn't make sense there, it doesn't make sense here either. Anyway, he does have a motive, an extremely obvious one. Sansa. This video isn't a character study of Littlefinger, so we don't have time to get into all the details, but everything about the way he behaves and what he says shows that his primary motivation throughout most of his life has been infatuation with Cat, shifted onto Sansa now that Cat is older and dead. His disillusionment with the songs comes from his loss to Brandon Stark in a duel. His desire for power and wealth comes from not being good enough to marry Cat. He boasts about his conquests over Cat, which are almost certainly made up. He is never married and has no love whatsoever for Lysa. He's constantly showing off to Sansa, touching her, trying to get her drunk. The imagery and descriptive language in every interaction he has with her is predatory and sexual. He thinks killing Tyrion will make him out to be the Florian to her Jonquil, that he is rescuing her from a disgusting, hated husband. And indeed the catspore he uses to deal with her, Dontos, is also a lecherous drunk who kisses her unasked for. Littlefinger is rescuing her from him as well, and using him as a contrast to make Littlefinger look better. In short, Littlefinger is a single-minded, desperate nonce. The air of mystique he wants to project is covering up a motivation so simple and visceral that it would be embarrassing for it to be revealed. This is important because it explains why he chose to involve Sansa in his scheme at all. By implicating her in the murder, he gives her no choice but to stick with him. He creates a danger that he then rescues her from. Having the plot be as elaborate and ludicrous as possible is him showing off what a master schemer he is to Sansa. Of course it's reckless and nonsensical in so many ways. Why trust Dontos with so much information and such a big role? Why hinge the whole thing on Sansa's hairnet when you could just have the poisoner take in the poison themselves? Why have to have the poisoner take the poison out of Sansa's hairnet in the middle of a crowded wedding feast, with Sansa not knowing what's going on? What would Olenna, or whoever, do if they couldn't tell which was the odd jewel out? After all, it must be pretty well disguised as neither Sansa nor Tyrion notice it. Littlefinger's plan is stupid, because he is stupid, and the whole point of his plan is to impress Sansa and show her what a powerful gigabrain mastermind he is. Okay, sure, but why would Olenna be on board with this? She seems to want to marry Sansa to her grandson Willis, so perhaps she wants Sansa to at least feel complicit in the murder. But then again, if Sansa doesn't know the poison is in her hair, what's the point? And Olenna doesn't seem to have any plan for what to do with Sansa after the poisoning, which seems like a pretty big oversight. And of course there's still the problem of why Olenna would trust Littlefinger in any way to be part of this scheme, when she absolutely doesn't need him. If her Sansa marrying plans were part of her plan at all, then presumably she would need Tyrion out of the way too, unless he was actually the target, But on top of that, she knows that Sansa is going to be a suspect if Joffrey or Tyrion are killed, and that Crown aren't just going to let her mosey off to Highgarden to marry into a rival house. And then there's the fact that Joffrey and Marjorie are drinking from the same cup. The cup that, if Joffrey is the target, is where the poison is going. A cup that Mace gave them as a present, so it's not like this came out of nowhere. Yes, the cup is sort of dumped by where Tyrion and Sansa are sitting before Joffrey drinks his last, but the whole thing is still way too risky. In short, I can accept Littlefinger partaking in this harebrained scheme with the purpose of implicating Sansa, impressing her and asserting dominance over her, but Olenna just makes no sense. But the trouble with taking Olenna out of the equation is the problem that comes from having any poisoning situation other than that presented. Why oh why did Olenna just so happen to straighten Sansa's hair? It's a pretty mega coincidence that someone would do this. It's pretty in character for Olenna, as a no-nonsense grandma who might use a bit of spit to wipe a smudge of dirt off a grandchild's face before heading into church, but still, Sansa's hair has to actually be out of place for Olenna to launch in. So for Olenna to be innocent, and Littlefinger to have planned this scheme out properly rather than just getting insanely lucky, someone must have messed up Sansa's hair deliberately at some point, so that someone would feel the need to sort it out, and Littlefinger's grandiose preening about how he moves in the highest circles with the most elaborate schemers would actually make sense. So who could have messed up Sansa's hair? Well, perhaps her handmaid, who is responsible for sorting out her hair, and could easily just have done up the hairnet wrong, or arranged her hair in a mess. Not like there's any mirrors Sansa could use to check, and Tyrion probably wouldn't notice, given he can't see the top of Sansa's head as he's too short. So, who is this mysterious handmaid I'm alluding to? Drumroll please. Shay. Shay gets appointed as Sansa's handmaiden and sorts her hair out before the wedding. We're reminded of this afterwards in Sansa's memory. It would be easy for Shay to mess up Sansa's hair, and it would be easy for her to take out the poison before putting the hairnet on. After all, if Olenna isn't the one who takes it from Sansa at the wedding, then who would? The answer, of course, is no one. It would be way too difficult to pull off, given that the poison looks exactly like the stones. The whole point of this is to make Sansa think that Littlefinger is a 200 IQ mega genius, but if you can cut corners when she isn't looking, all the better. So Shay can take out the poison on her own, when she has time to fiddle around and find the damn thing, then put the hairnet on Sansa and leave it askew so that some grandmotherly type will feel the need to reset it. What next? Well, as Tyrion and Sansa are heading off to the wedding, Shay asks to go with them and serve at table, a perfect spot from which to poison Littlefinger's target. However, here Tyrion scuppers Littlefinger's wonderful plan. No doubt he assumed Tyrion would just say yes and bring Shay along, but he says no, and so Littlefinger's plan is in ruins. The whole thing is foiled. But who does poison Joffrey then? And who was the target? And how does Littlefinger improv the Olenna story so well? Let's answer the second question first, because it will help us answer the first. As Littlefinger says, he doesn't really have much of a motive to poison Joffrey, except maybe to create a crime for which Sansa will be suspected. Even that, though, is a bit much, because if Littlefinger's endgame is to reveal he has Sansa and marry her, satisfying both his Prince Andrew-esque desires and his need to feel power over the cat stand in her family and the aristocracy at large, then her being suspected of regicide is a bit of a tough nut to crack. Much better for her to be suspected of murdering an ugly, friendless dwarf who no one liked anyway. Then she would only be suspected of murdering her husband. And if you are her new husband and you say it's fine, then it's your funeral, I guess. And after all, Littlefinger has a dozen reasons to kill Tyrion. Tyrion knows he lied about the dagger, he's poking around the death of Jon Arryn, he's married to Sansa so has to die anyway, he screws Littlefinger around with a fake marriage proposal, he chucked out Littlefinger's ally Janos Slynt, he's been investigating Littlefinger's past, the list goes on. We know Littlefinger did actually arrange the jousting dwarves, and that works better as a distraction so as Tyrion won't notice Shay slipping poison into his wine than it does as just a way to get Tyrion angry so he'll say something that implicates him in Joffrey's poisoning. It's hardly as if anything was needed anyway. And when Littlefinger first gets Sansa aboard the boat, the first thing he does is remark with a smile that Tyrion is going to die, because that was the whole point of the elaborate scheme. When Sansa worries about poor old Tyrion, Littlefinger tries to blacken his name. First by bringing up Tysha in the hopes that it would be a shock to Sansa, then lying about what happened when it turns out Sansa already knows. And of course, getting Shay to poison Tyrion is another bit of rich justice from Littlefinger's point of view. After all, Tyrion, even littler than Littlefinger, is the man who through accident of birth has been granted everything Littlefinger wants, namely Sansa, yet he spurns her and prefers some random whore. Get that random whore to kill him. And it's not like Shay didn't warn him. When Tyrion tries to put her in the kitchens, which she tries to avoid, she laughs and says, "My lord, I'd poison you." This might also be how Littlefinger hears about Tysha, by the way, because Tyrion then tells Shay. And Shay is a pretty good potential poisoner. Tyrion wouldn't suspect her, she is a good liar as shown by her performance at the trial, she is easily bought by gold and jewels, she doesn't care about Tyrion, and who can blame her given how he treats her and the danger he puts her in. And that treatment and danger, as well as having to be a whore to the ugliest man alive, is pretty good motive for wanting him dead. So, Littlefinger wants Tyrion dead, by using Shay to poison him. But that fails, so what next? Well, Littlefinger isn't the only one Shay is working for. She's also working for Varys. Varys, of course, is the one who helps Tyrion sneak Shay all over the place, who finds Tyrion guards for her, and it's unlikely he's doing it out of the goodness of his own heart. After all, he weasels his way into this position by rocking up for coffee and gossip with Shay at the start of Clash. When Tyrion tells Varys Shay is going to work in the kitchen, Varys tries to talk him out of it, and offers a different role, as handmaiden to the Stokeworths. This gets her back in the Red Keep, and she eventually replaces Sansa's maids because all of them are Cersei's spies. And Varys is the one who benefits most from the eventual assassination. He gets Tyrion on his side, gets him to kill Tywin and sneak away, which puts Cersei in charge and destabilizes the realm almost immediately, something Littlefinger didn't see coming. Tyrion is also worth keeping for his usefulness as a political pawn and his dragon lore, as shown by his story in Dance. Thing is, Varys doesn't have time pressure for any of this. He can start a destabilization whenever he wants. If he learns of Littlefinger's plan to kill Tyrion from Shay, though, now he realizes that if he wants to keep Tyrion alive, he needs to do something fast. Littlefinger, by contrast, does have a ticking clock. Tyrion could at any moment reveal that Littlefinger lied about the dagger, he could uncover the plot to kill Jon Arryn, or worst of all, he could sleep with Sansa, which would be a huge blow to Littlefinger's ego. Remember how he boasts about Cat and Lysa. So Varys takes the opportunity to use Littlefinger's scheme against him. Shay has provided the poison, and Varys can use it to kill Joffrey. Varys is pretty much the only person in King's Landing not mentioned as being at the feast, which could well be because he knows to steer clear so he won't be blamed. Or perhaps he is in disguise so he can drop the poison in himself. It's hardly a task you should leave to a lackey after all. And if Margaery happens to drink some too, all the better. Imagine how much angrier the Tyrells would be if their beloved Margaery had died. Indeed, maybe Margaery will drink some and Joffrey won't, and chaos will ensue that way. Whatever happens, Varys will benefit. And Tyrion will be blamed, of course. Shay will be encouraged to testify, probably by Varys saying he's going to reveal her secret connection to Tyrion anyway, so she might as well try to make some cash out of it, then put in Tywin's bed for Tyrion to find. Tommen will become king as a child, fully in the control of his mother, whereas Joffrey would have been more independent of her, and a better king for the populace to follow, given that he looks more like a king and is able to actually ride in battle and stuff like that. The great part about this is that Littlefinger will not really know what happened, and assume that his scheme went wrong and Joffrey got killed accidentally. Not only will no one know Varys did it, some of his rivals will think they did it. What Varys didn't reckon, though, was that Littlefinger would kidnap Sansa. Otherwise, he presumably would have stopped it. How did he miss this? In a conversation with Tyrion about Shay, Varys confesses he doesn't know why Tyrion is taking all these risks for Shay. Tyrion remarks that Varys might know, if he wasn't a eunuch. Varys may be similarly mistaken about Littlefinger, having told Ned that Littlefinger loves Littlefinger. He doesn't see the Sansa kidnap coming, because it's his one blind spot. Littlefinger obviously isn't going to admit any of this to Sansa, because it reveals how royally he screwed up. Instead, he needs to come up with a plausible sounding story about how the poison made it from Sansa's hairnet to Joffrey. He's already arranged so that someone will probably straighten Sansa's hair, but he doesn't know who exactly. So when he suggests that someone might have messed with Sansa's hair and she reveals that it was Olenna, does he really just make up Olenna's motive on the spot? The answer, no, because it would be much easier to just have someone at the wedding who can then report back and tell Littlefinger what went on. That person hasn't reported back when Littlefinger picks Sansa up, so he can't info dump there, and needs time on the ship to debrief his agent and then come up with his story, which is why it takes until they get to the Fingers for Littlefinger to broach the subject. Before he does though, first of all he wants to check if Sansa spotted his agent. Hopefully she didn't, because then he can fully maintain the illusion that the Olenna plan was there from the start, and he's not just making it up based on what he knows. So he calls up Oswell Kettleblack, who was in King's Landing the night of the wedding, and rode Sansa and Dontos back to Littlefinger's ship, and asks Sansa if she recognises him. Littlefinger does this under the guise of seeing if she can tell he's a Kettleblack's dad, but it serves another purpose. Did she see him at the wedding? She didn't, which is good, because now Littlefinger can launch into his spiel about Olenna. So, there we have it. Littlefinger wanted to poison Tyrion via Shay in order to get to Sansa, but his plan was foiled. Varys took over and offed Joffrey to sow instability, knowing that he had to act quickly because Littlefinger would eventually do Tyrion in some other way. Olenna is innocent. Of this, at least. Well, maybe. This is the best I can do to solve the twin problems of 1. Why would Olenna go along with this plan? And 2. What are the odds that someone would straighten Sansa's hair if they're not in on it? Let's be honest though, Littlefinger's account is probably meant to be broadly true. The inconsistencies and illogicalities are just that, not a hint of anything deeper. But I find it more fun to find some explanation for them, so there. Until next time, thanks for watching, and goodbye.